Are the new cameras on the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max worth an upgrade? I have an iPhone 16 Pro and an iPhone 17 Pro here. There is no difference between the cameras on the Pro and Pro Max models. To judge the quality of the cameras of the new iPhone 17 Pro, there are 10 categories. In the last category, I'll also compare it to the iPhone 15 Pro Max to see how much progress has been made in 2 years. If the upgrade and new features are really worth it, the 17 Pro or Pro Max gets a point. If it scores more than 5 points, I think the cameras could be a reason to upgrade. And there's something else I'll show you today. Whether for personal or professional use, the iPhone is one of my most important tools. For example, I also use it to display the image from my big camera. That's why I looked for a simple solution to quickly and securely prop up my iPhone in an upright position. And I found a great solution for the iPhone 17 Pro, which I'll show you a little later. But right at the beginning, let's find out if anything has changed in terms of overall image quality. First, we'll take a look at the comparison of the image quality in video mode, followed by a photo quality comparison. Apple has never explicitly stated this, but looking at the specs, it could be that the wide main camera, the One X 24mm camera, and the ultrawide camera, the camera marked 0.5x in the app, have remained unchanged. Neither the sensor nor the lens appear to have been changed. We'll take a look at the new telephoto camera in a separate category. But even if the hardware of the wide and ultra-wide lenses hasn't been changed, the software also plays a decisive role. After all, the iPhone 17 Pro has a new, faster processor, and it could be that certain processing steps in the software are reserved for the iPhone 17 Pro. At first glance, however, this does not seem to be the case. The colors, contrast and overall look of these two shots appear identical. You may see it differently, but I can't see any relevant difference between these two shots taken with the main camera. The dynamic range of both shots is great. Even when we enlarge the shot significantly, as here with this shot from the ultra-wide camera, I personally can't see any relevant differences. Both shots have the same amount of detail. Even the shots in the cinematic video mode are hardly distinguishable from each other. In summary, it can be said that the image quality in video mode has not improved. There are a few new features, which we will look at in a moment, but the image quality of the standard video mode remains unchanged. No upgrade point for this. What I said earlier about image quality and software applies even more to photos. Since only one frame is output here, the entire processing power is available to edit this one frame so that it looks its best. This is also a point of criticism about the iPhone and smartphone photos in general, because the result often looks overly bright, has an unnatural dynamic range, and appears somewhat unnatural. To allow everyone to customize photos to their own style, Apple introduced photographic styles 2 years ago. All of this makes it difficult to compare smartphone photos, because which photo you prefer is often a matter of taste. The fact is, there are hardly any differences between the photos taken with the iPhone 17 Pro and the iPhone 16 Pro, at least not when we use the wide main lens or the ultra-wide lens. Here you can also see a photo comparison in portrait mode. Even in portrait mode, which of course relies much more heavily on editing, there is no relevant difference between the iPhone 17 Pro and the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. Both cameras can also take 48 megapixel RAW photos, which are well suited for editing. And yes, I know, we're still missing an important comparison: low light. We'll come to that a little later. First, let's take a look at one of the most important upgrades, the new telephoto camera. However, there is no upgrade point for the image quality in photo mode. The new telephoto camera is certainly one of the most important differences between the cameras of the iPhone 17 Pro and the iPhone 16 Pro. The iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max have not only been given a new lens for the new telephoto camera, but also a new sensor. Interestingly, the lens does not have a longer focal length, but a shorter one. This can also be clearly seen in these shots. The field of view of the iPhone 17 Pro is clearly wider, as the focal length of the new lens is 100mm, which is 4x, rather than 120mm or 5x as with the iPhone 16 Pro or Pro Max. But the second difference is even more important. Just like the main camera and the ultra-wide camera, the new telephoto camera has a new 48 megapixel sensor, and just like the main camera, this sensor allows for a 2x crop with the quality of an optical zoom. At least that's what Apple claims. This 2x zoom is achieved by simply using the inner part of the sensor for the shot. And thanks to the high resolution sensor, this inner area is sufficient for shooting 4K videos. The photos only have a maximum resolution of 12 megapixels, but the result is better than simply cropping a photo or zooming in digitally with the camera app. In this way, the telephoto camera achieves a zoom factor of 8x or 200mm. And of course, the result with this zoom factor is significantly better than simply zooming in digitally to 8x on the iPhone 16 Pro. You shouldn't forget that the iPhone 16 Pro only has a 12 megapixel sensor for the telephoto camera. With the iPhone 16 Pro, a really high quality shot is only possible up to 5x or just above. In this respect, the new sensor enables significantly more range at a reasonable quality. Depending on the situation, this can be very useful. Apart from the better zoom capabilities, the image quality hardly changes despite the new sensor. Colors, contrast, dynamic range, everything looks very similar, whether for videos or photos. Nevertheless, I think the new telephoto camera is a very useful improvement. I also think it's better that it has a native focal length of 4x or 100mm. 5x was simply too much for many situations. For example, when taking full body shots of people or even small groups, you had to stand too far back. The telephoto lens on the iPhone 16 Pro is hardly suitable for these situations. But what I'm still interested in is how well the new telephoto lens and the other cameras perform in low light. We'll take a look at that right now. But regardless, the iPhone 17 Pro gets an upgrade point for the new telephoto camera, because in my opinion, it's a great improvement. Potentially, the new high-resolution sensor of the new telephoto camera could enable better performance in low light, even though the aperture has not changed and is still 2.8 on both cameras. And indeed, there are a few differences. Especially in video mode, I would say that a 4x recording looks slightly better than a 5x recording on the iPhone 16 Pro. However, it's different with an 8x recording. You should avoid using this in low light. When taking photos, on the other hand, there is hardly any noticeable difference. At least not between 4x and 5x. The shots taken with the other lenses look very similar. Maybe it's just my imagination. But when shooting with the main lens, there are now slightly better lens flares, and the shot with the ultrawide lens looks minimally better on the iPhone 17 Pro. When taking photos, I don't see any relevant difference. Overall, in my opinion, this is not enough to earn an upgrade point. The iPhone 17's finally improved front camera makes it even more interesting to simply set up the iPhone somewhere and film yourself without any hassle. That's why I was looking for a high quality case with an integrated stand for my iPhone 17 Pro. And I'm very happy to have discovered the new Magic Stand case from casekoo. casekoo has also agreed to sponsor this video. The Magic Stand is the first stand that can be rotated a full 360 degrees and is permanently integrated into the case. This allows you to position the iPhone vertically or horizontally. In many cases, this means you no longer need a tripod to film yourself. You can also use the Magic Stand to read a book, watch a movie, or as I often do myself, use your iPhone for video conferences. This case from casekoo, which is of course also available for the iPhone 16 or 15, is available in all kinds of colors. While I often prefer simple colors like this deep blue, I have to admit the cosmic orange color looks very cool and would of course go really well with the orange iPhone 17 Pro. And the case has another advantage. The camera cutout has a relatively high edge, which means the lenses are very well protected. You can also use the stand to hold your iPhone securely so that you don't drop it when taking selfies. If you like the case, use the link in the description for an additional discount. And Amazon is currently running a limited time sale. Okay, it's time to take a look at what for many is perhaps the most important camera improvement on the iPhone 17 Pro. The new front camera. Incidentally, all new iPhones have been equipped with the new selfie camera, including the standard iPhone 17 and iPhone 17 Air. But what is new about this front camera? The new center stage front camera has received slightly different improvements than I would have expected. With 18 megapixels, the new sensor has more resolution than the old 12 megapixel sensor. However, the real important difference lies not in the resolution, but in the format. The new sensor is no longer rectangular but square. The usual format for a camera sensor is 4:3, and the new square format enables a few very special features. When using the new selfie camera in a standard format such as 4:3 or 16:9, there is hardly any noticeable difference at first glance, even if the field of view is finally a bit wider when you zoom out. But the new square sensor enables an ingenious feature. Without turning the smartphone, you can switch from portrait mode to landscape mode and vice versa if necessary. This means you can finally hold your iPhone upright, which is much more comfortable, and take a group selfie in landscape mode. The camera automatically detects whether the field of view is too narrow for a selfie and either zooms out slightly or even switches to landscape mode automatically. For example, for a group selfie. If you are in a video conference, the image is dynamically cropped so that you are always in the center of the shot. Of course, this only works up to a certain point. Apart from these new features, the image quality is hardly any different from the old camera. Of course, the photos now have a slightly higher resolution. However, you can only achieve the maximum resolution of 18 megapixels horizontally and vertically if you zoom out, so if you use the wider field of view. That means new, interesting features, yes? Better image quality, no. Nevertheless, I think the new front camera is worth an upgrade point. Before we take a look at the other new features, I'd like to know how well the stabilization of the new cameras works. Apple is currently advertising that the videos from the new cameras are ultra stabilized. Optical stabilization is still only available on the main lens. And in fact, this stabilization comparison shows no real advantage for the iPhone 17 Pro. Even with the ultra-wide camera, you can't see any difference. And yes, the shot taken with the new telephoto camera on the iPhone 17 Pro looks a little more stable, but it also benefits from the shorter focal length. So no points for that. It therefore seems better to focus on the new features rather than looking for other improvements. One of the new features is the ability to record with the front and rear cameras simultaneously. This is a very special feature, and it raises the question of what it could be used for. Perhaps to take B-roll footage for a YouTube video or social media video, but I'm sure we'll see some funny use cases soon. Nevertheless, I'm not entirely convinced of the usefulness of this feature at the moment. Also, you don't get two recordings, as I had initially assumed, but a picture-in-picture recording with the front camera recording displayed as a small image in the corner. For me, this is not an upgrade point. Apart from that, the new iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max offer a number of Pro features that are more geared towards experienced users. For example, the iPhone 17 Pro is now capable of recording in ProRes RAW. This is a combination of RAW video recording and the ProRes codec. RAW recording stores the raw data captured by the sensor. The advantage of this is that you get significantly more information than with a conventional recording, which is heavily processed and compressed. A RAW recording mainly makes sense if you want maximum flexibility in editing, meaning you want to change colors, white balance or exposure in post. The problem with this, however, is the enormous amounts of data it generates. That's why it's combined with ProRes, a codec developed by Apple for compressing video recordings. As you can see, this is an absolute pro feature that most users will never use, partly because it is only available in combination with an external SSD due to the high data volumes involved. For the majority of users, this feature offers no advantage, therefore no upgrade point. And basically the same applies to Genlock and LOG2. LOG2 is Apple's new flat color profile. Here you can see a test shot taken with LOG2. LOG2 is an improved version of the first log profile. A log recording is also intended for editing video recordings, especially for color grading. In theory, log also gives you a better dynamic range than a recording in standard video mode. However, this is not the case with the iPhone, as the standard video mode uses heavy HDR processing. But one thing is certain, a log recording is softer, looks less digital, and is better suited for color grading. And Genlock is a professional technology for synchronizing devices, which means that if you're recording with multiple devices, you can synchronize the recordings perfectly with each other. But most users will never use these two features either. However, since I didn't award any points in the last two categories, I'm giving an upgrade point this time for all the new Pro features together, so to speak. And as promised, here is a comparison with the iPhone 15 Pro. Most of you won't want to upgrade from an iPhone 16 Pro, but from an older device. Of course, all the strengths and new features I mentioned today also apply in comparison with the iPhone 15 Pro. In particular, the new telephoto camera and the new selfie camera. But only the iPhone 15 Pro Max features a 5x telephoto lens. The standard Pro only has a 3x optical zoom factor. And there are also a few other features that the iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max did not have. In my opinion, the most important one is 4K slow motion recording at 120 frames per second. The iPhone 15 Pro couldn't do that yet. It can be very useful to take high quality slow motion shots. In addition, the iPhone 15 Pro had an ultra-wide camera with a sensor that could only take 12 megapixel photos. The ultra-wide camera sensor last year received a similar upgrade to the telephoto camera this year. With the ultra-wide camera, however, this mainly affects photos, which don't have as much detail on the 15 Pro. Apart from that, the iPhone 15 Pro still uses the old version of photographic styles. And the 15 Pro and Pro Max don't have a camera control button, a button that probably only a few people use anyway. But if you disregard these features, The iPhone 15 Pro takes almost identical shots to the iPhone 17 Pro. You can see this clearly in these comparison shots. At most, there are sometimes slight differences in white balance. 4K 120 is an extremely important feature for me, so I'm giving an extra point for that. That makes a total of 4 points. Compared to the iPhone 16 Pro, the new great telephoto camera and the new selfie camera are the most important changes. Compared to the 15 Pro, 4K 120 and perhaps photographic styles are added. Is that enough for an upgrade? Of course, that also depends on which of the new features are important to you. But the iPhone continues to be a fantastic device for video and photo shooting and has simply gotten a little better year after year. There will be detailed tutorials on the video and photo features of the iPhone 17, so stay tuned. And check out the link to this cool case. Give me a like as feedback if you found this video interesting, and see you next time.